what's going on, friends, family? My name is Skylent, and today I wanted to talk to you about player versus environment. And in the intro here, I'm going to use some weird gameplay. It's going to be from Monster Hunter because, duh, that's probably like the best game to showcase player versus environment. And if you guys are totally new, under the rock, I don't know, player versus environment basically means you, the player, versus monsters. Some people do call that player versus monster, but generally it's PvE, guys. The environment or the world that you are fighting is really important, especially in RPGs, but we're talking about MMORPGs today. And often I find the case that these games lack really good PvE, but really, even in games that I could even list in this video, which I will, I think that they could do better. But I do want to make a list and just kind of rant it out and say, like, hey, these are the ones that I found, like, something special about, something unique about, specifically in the MMO genre. But I also want to know your thoughts and feelings. This video is basically like me shouting and then really wanting an answer back. Like, I'm asking a question. What are some good PvE MMO? Yeah, so anyways, here's my thoughts and feelings. But, you know, MMOs are wide and sweeping. There's so many and a lot of bad ones. So, yeah, let's pierce through that and try to find the goodness out there. But, yeah, here we go. I'm just going to spit it out. Okay, so the first game that I want to talk about for interesting PvE, it's got to be Guild Wars 2. And this is probably the first time that I've ever done this, but I'm doing the video kind of in reverse, where what's coming to mind, what's jumping out to me, what's most obvious, that's what I'm going to be talking about first. So Guild Wars 2 is really special in my ideas of PvE for MMOs because of specifically its MMO PvE. That's going to be the open world boss siege things that they have going on, and they are a little bit gimmicky, but they're like the only MMO that I've seen that really properly does open world boss fights. Now, you might be thinking of maybe some elite monsters or some of the dynamic events, but I'm talking about where there's multiple event chains and it leads to a giant world boss that has multiple phases, and you need different like platoons of people doing different things. Tecadal is probably the most famous one, where he has these giant tidal waves that you have to jump over or run away from. You've got like basically it's a zone-wide fight where you have to jump around and engage these giant lasers that shoot his zombie ass. It's pretty fucking ridiculous, and that's exactly the point, where a lot of MMOs have open world sort of elite monsters or whatever. I think Guild Wars 2 has the best, with the dynamic events, and of course the literal siege monsters, where you have hundreds of players, or 100 players, engaged in this combat, which has literal tidal waves and shit like that. You have different people picking up like flamethrowers against the ice dragon, while other people are smashing icicles, things like that. Everyone is sort of working together, helping each other, but in different, unique ways, which is what we'd really come to expect from an MMO, and yet it never is satiated except for in this one particular game. So in terms of true MMO PvE, I think that Guild Wars 2 is hands down, it is objectively the number one in terms of, that big ass monster fight. It's the best. Okay, so next up that I can kind of think of, and that's going to be really, I kind of don't want to promote this because it's not technically massive, but it's going to be games like Final Fantasy XIV, World of Warcraft, and I guess a tie with Terra as well. I've only really played Terra endgame, but I've seen a lot of footage on Final Fantasy XIV, as well as I've touched, and I've watched the competitive for the endgame raiding and dungeon scene for World of Warcraft. So these are 3 games, and there might be a few more that are similar that have dungeon, it's like 5 players or just, a handful of players run into a dungeon, and then they do like this competitive, hardcore, stay out of the red circle sort of situation. You got 1 tank, 3 DPS, 1 healer, something like that. And you just run in and you have this sort of speedrun style encounter, or it's just like this really grueling, hard encounter that maybe requires a lot of resources, requires a lot of time, a lot of patience, and maybe it's like, I guess, the Dark Souls of MMOs, where, you get to the end game and it's like truly engrossing, and it's kind of like, it's hard. I don't know what to say. It's hard, it's difficult, and at the same time, it's not really MMO. So I get it. It's not like Guild Wars 2, but this is inside of an MMO. So there's like this whole ecosystem and multiple gameplay loops, and this happens to be a popular gameplay loop that we do see in MMOs, where they just, it's dungeon diving. So which ones have the best dungeon diving? I do think that is Final Fantasy XIV, Terra, as well as World of Warcraft, with mainly WoW being like that's the one that has the WoW factor, and Final Fantasy XIV is more an emulation of that, though for a copy it's pretty good, though I do like the more hard trinity that we do see in World of Warcraft. Where I know you do have healers and stuff in Final Fantasy XIV, it just seems that generally they play more DPS oriented. So yeah, if you're looking for dungeon diving and the end game dungeon scene, that's going to be those 3 games. I think they do it the best. Next up, we're going to talk about open world PvE VP. This is going to be in games like Hunt Showdown or The Cycle, and this is actually being more popular seen in a few other, maybe like Dark Souls, actually? Or, oh yes, Sea of Thieves. So some non-MMO games or MMO-light games you can actually see incorporating PvE VP, but this was first really known as an MMO sort of aspect. And I think that the games that have the best PvE VP really sort of evenly distributing like PvE content and PvP content, I'm gonna have to name Albion Online as being something kind of spectacular. Now, it's sort of weird because this is known as a PvP game, especially being a guild-oriented game, and yet I play it as a solo player who goes around in mostly PvEs. I play with a spear, and generally I have a survivalist build, which means I run around the open world and I just kind of farm mobs, and I wait for another solo player that I can just run up and gank. So I really have a very even experience with the game. Also, I make a good bit of money and have a lot of fun just dueling inside the major cities. So me as this solo sort of like lone black swordsman but with a spear sort of experience, yeah, you know, it feels pretty good. I feel like I'm walking around with a big dick. I love it. Albion Online actually can be fun for Farmville style players, for a number of different kind of PvP and PvE players. There are dungeons and there is, you know, like a hard trinity whenever you do pursue that sort of line of work. But yeah, when it comes to these hardcore PvP sandbox MMOs, often it's like Last Oasis. It's pretty much just, it's really focused on PvP. Now there are some non-MMO games like Ark, Survival Evolved, sure, absolutely. And like I said, Hunt Showdown, yeah, really cool games that do evenly distribute the experience. But man, dude, when it comes to these PvP MMO, it's always like, it's almost like an excuse. Like they just make a barren open game and it's like, it's a PvP game, fuck it, you know? They just quit it halfway through. But I think the best PvP games are the ones that have also really good PvE. That's why I loved Classic. That's right, vanilla World of Warcraft had amazing open world PvE VP with the questing and then the Horde versus Alliance. I loved it. I fucking ate that shit up. I loved it. Rogues for life. But Albion Online, I think, is kind of re-inspiring a lot of players to try out some PvE VP, especially because the cat versus mouse is so fun. If you are someone who is just running around and skinning, you are literally just a skinning, like that is your class. You literally have a skinning knife, you have a skinning hat, and all you do is skin. Someone comes up to gank you, all they are is a ganker. All they are is a wolf. You have tools and abilities to stealth, to run around, to catch them in like a whirlwind or something and run away. So you actually have a very unique experience like that as a PvEer or as a mouse versus cats. So PvE VP, the best game, I think I gotta say it's Albion Online. And finally, PvE, I think generally if you're looking for PvE, you might be looking for a game that you could say like grinding, okay? Maybe like you just want the grind. What is the best game that has the best like infinite grind, that is just the best spectacle, the best power fantasy? And we can often see that in games like action RPGs or spectacle fighters, so maybe like Path of Exile or Warframe, stuff like that. Those are not MMOs, but what game actually is an MMO, literally massive, has a big sweeping world that you can run around with tons of other people and maybe have to compete with other players inside of this giant environment. And there's a few that I think are really fun, and I've already done a unique list on just that. We could talk about Trove and etc., but I think the one I'm going to go with is really obvious. It's one that you all know. It's very popular, and that's going to be Black Desert Online. I've done a number of videos on this, and while you guys for some reason hate when I do videos on it but love when Cry does the exact same videos on it, I don't know, guys. Look, I've been critical of Black Desert, but at the same time, it's kind of objective. Like, look at the game. It is the fastest, most crazy, ridiculous, bombastic power fantasy that you can imagine. It does technically have an infinite grind. It has so many, like, really, like, little tiny, like, in-depth gameplay loops that you can pursue. So that's going to be from grinding certain different kind of mobs and with different classes, or if you want to do life skilling, blah, 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 whatever. There's a lot of different environmental things that you can do or ways to interact with the sandbox that's a little bit different and maybe not as sandboxy as we're used to as Westerners. It's a lot more kind of Excel spreadsheety. It's definitely more analytical, more number crunchy, but at the same time, when you actually get into the game, the visceral, mechanical feeling of playing this game kind of feels like a fighting game. It definitely is a spectacle fighter, but as an MMO. If a spectacle fighter was an MMO, it would look like Black Desert, and it does. It's freaking gorgeous, and it kind of like, yeah, in a way you turn your brain off, but it also does require a tremendous amount of strategy to really play the game. Is it pay to win? In my opinion, yes, it is pay to win. And if you play the game seriously, competitively, or really just barely at all, it will impact your life because it also does have open world PvP. But for the PvE, I have to say, the mobs are really fucking dumb. The open world bosses aren't as good as Guild Wars 2. There's no dungeons or anything like we saw in Guild Wars 2, and the questing is really dumb as well. But just objectively, in terms of power fantasy, the grind, how many mobs you're killing, what you're doing with your fingers, it's just the best. It's just the craziest. So, having a lot of fun with that, and you guys should actually check it out too. It's definitely a game that you can tease and try for yourself, and if you give it up in the end, I don't blame you, but it's still something that's just literally something special. Please give it a shot. Okay, so when you're looking for PvE games, it's entirely possible you clicked on this list because you wanted really good questing. Now, I've done a list video specifically on the best questing MMO, and I'm just going to go ahead and lay it out here. The best questing in any MMO, period, flat. You have to... you can't even fight me, but you have to fight me in the comments below if you really do think otherwise, but it's just no one's going to believe you. It's RuneScape. RuneScape has just done the best quests. Why is that? That's because each individual quest has been handcrafted. There's none of this like just kill 10 boars, just pick 10 flowers. And even though there are some sort of chorish, like, I guess, quests or, adventures you can go on, really, in the end, they're all epics, or they all lead up to something, or they're all just a really punchy, quick, clean joke. And that's really what RuneScape is to me. So the best quests that have kind of fun PvE, like there is actually some bite to the challenge. Like if you die, you do lose your shit, and that really sucks. It does set you back. The game is grind focused, and there's even some parts that are PvP enabled, so you gotta really watch out for that. But aside from that, the strategies and the tactics of the grind also exist. Something, we could have competed with Black Desert Online. Not as visceral, but anyways. There is a lot to PvE with RuneScape, but I'm just going to put it on this list for the questing because they're so funny. There's literally a quest, I love pointing this out, and you can actually experience this for yourself. Download the game, get past the graphics, please just ignore it, I know. The charm will grow on you, trust me. But there's a quest very early on where you go into like this murder mystery kind of thing, and not to spoil a joke, but there is a literal fourth wall breaking joke because the game is aware that it is a video game and you can see over walls, and then I'm just saying, like, it'll slap you in the face. You're gonna be like, oh, that's the joke he was talking about. It literally made me laugh out loud. I've never emoted ever to an MMO. You guys have probably played a lot of MMOs, even stuff that have cinematics like Guild Wars 2 or something, where it's just MMO, right? It's just MMO questing. It's, it's just, it's filler. Basically, everything is filler. But in RuneScape, it's just so self-aware. It's so funny. Everything is so punchy and so handcrafted that I can't help but, just glow. Just glow and rant and froth at the mouth about it. So yeah, I'm pretty sure most MMO YouTubers would absolutely agree with me, and I've already talked to a lot of them. But yeah, me and Lazy Peon are in total agreement. RuneScape's got the best questing. It's just so silly. So yeah, and it's not all a joke. It can be kind of hardcore, but in terms of PvE questing, I mean, from cross-dressing, there's stealth missions. You have a wide variety of actual like combat encounters and non-combat encounters that you would not expect for a game that's just point and click to move and point and click to attack. It's really surprising. A lot of, thought goes into this game, and a lot of thought that it takes for you to actually play it efficiently and well, or just to survive. So yeah, it looks all childish, it looks old, it looks cute, but it's actually this wide scope like epic that you have to definitely try the quests in, because this is the one MMO, maybe the only MMO, where the quests are actually quests. Anyways, guys, that's my rant on PvE. I just kind of said what I said, what kind of just flowed from my brain and my balls. I don't know. But what are your thoughts and feelings on PvE inside of MMOs? And again, I opened and closed this segment with footage of Monster Hunter because I need an excuse to play Monster Hunter more because I'm addicted, but also because I think it's so evoking to play a game like Dark Souls or Monster Hunter and notice specifically what we're totally fucking missing from the MMO space. However, a game called New World is actually trying to make a Dark Souls-inspired MMO, so you guys might want to check that out. And I think maybe eventually we will have more of like that Dragon's Dogma and Monster Hunter style content inside of MMOs like we actually see with the upcoming Blue Protocol. So I don't know what the future is going to hold, but I think slowly and creepingly we're going to have more emphasis on PvE content. This year is definitely the year of PvP. That's for damn sure, and it's been a long time coming. Don't get me wrong, I'm hyped for that. I'm an esport player myself. I'm competitive, but I'm in love with really, really good PvE. I'm a jungler player, you know, in MOBAs. I loved Dark Souls and games that have that asymmetrical multiplayer, monsters versus humans, or, you know, villains and invasions and stuff like that. So hopefully we do get more PvEVP games, and we do need more competitive games with stuff like good questing and RuneScape, open world giant bosses, Guild Wars 2, right? More grind-based games even, which ARPGs are pretty popular for competing with Black Desert Online. And I really want more endgame rating games, because basically the true competitive ones that are MMOs is World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV, and right now is maybe like Monster Hunter has some world championships and stuff like that. So we definitely need more PvE, you know, like a competitive spirit in terms of that, because you can totally have esports that are PvE oriented, and the East is definitely showing us up with that. So anyways, this is a long ass outro. I'm fucking out of words to say. Much love. See you in the next one.